The stars had always called to Cole. Even as a child growing up in a small town in Ohio, she would sit on her roof at night and stare at the sky, wondering what secrets hid between those distant lights. Now, at 42 years old, she had spent half her life chasing those secrets. She was a lieutenant commander in the United Earth Space Corps, and she had seen things that would have amazed her younger self, but nothing had prepared her for what she was about to find. Her ship, the research vessel Starbound Hope, drifted through the cold darkness beyond Neptune. They were on a routine survey mission, mapping asteroids and collecting data that most people back on Earth would never care about. It was boring work, but loved it. Every rock, every ice fragment, every strange reading on her instruments was a tiny piece of a much larger puzzle. "Commander, you need to see this," said Danny Park, her communications officer. He was young, barely 25, with nervous eyes that never seemed to rest. Right now, those eyes were very wide. Walked to his station and looked at his screen. A signal pulsed across it, rising and falling in patterns she had never seen before. It was not random noise. It was not natural. Someone or something had created it. "Where is it coming from?" she asked. Danny checked his instruments twice before answering. "About 200,000 kilometers from here, but Commander, that is not the strange part." He swallowed hard. "The signal is old, really old. My computer says it has been repeating for at least 3 million years." Felt her heart beat faster. 3 million years. Humans had barely existed for a fraction of that time. Whatever had made this signal was ancient beyond imagination. She should have called Earth. She should have waited for orders. Protocol demanded caution, but had not become an explorer by following every rule. Some discoveries were too important to wait. "Set a course," she said. "We are going to find out what is out there." The crew was nervous but excited. They were scientists, explorers, people who had dedicated their lives to finding answers. None of them wanted to turn back. The Starbound Hope changed direction and flew toward the unknown. 2 hours later, they found it. At first, thought her eyes were playing tricks on her. The shapes on her were too large, too impossible. But as the ship drew closer, the truth became clear. 17 vessels floated in perfect formation, each one bigger than anything humanity had ever built. The smallest was 5 kilometers long. The largest was almost 20. They hung in the void like sleeping giants, covered in strange symbols that glowed with faint blue light. "My God," whispered Lisa Grant, the ship's doctor. She had come to the bridge to see for herself. "Who built these?" Nobody had an answer. Ordered the ship to hold position while they scanned the alien fleet. The vessels were made of materials that did not exist on any periodic table. Their power cores still hummed with energy after millions of years. They were not dead. They were waiting. "I am taking a shuttle closer," announced. Her first officer, a serious man named Greg Torres, grabbed her arm. "Commander, that is insane. We do not know what those things will do." "That is exactly why I need to find out," she replied. "If something goes wrong, you take the ship and run. Get back to Earth. Tell them what we found." Greg wanted to argue, but he knew that look in her eyes. Cole had made her decision. She flew the small shuttle alone, approaching the largest vessel at the center of the formation. Her hands shook slightly on the controls. Fear and wonder battled inside her chest. She had dreamed of moments like this, of finding proof that humanity was not alone. Now that it was happening, she felt very small. The lead ship seemed to notice her approach. Lights flickered across its hull, racing from one end to the other like thoughts moving through a brain. Then a beam of golden light shot out and wrapped around her shuttle. Tried to pull away, but her controls were useless. The light pulled her forward, dragging her toward an opening that appeared in the alien vessel's side. Back on the Starbound Hope, Greg watched in horror. "Commander, Commander, respond." But her radio only gave static. Inside the alien ship, the shuttle landed softly in a massive chamber. The walls glowed with soft light, and the air smelled clean and fresh, like a forest after rain. She should have been terrified, but something about this place felt welcoming, almost warm. She stepped out of the shuttle and walked forward. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. Then, from nowhere and everywhere at once, figures appeared around her. They looked like ghosts made of light, tall and graceful, with faces that seemed both alien and strangely kind. "Do not be afraid," said one of them, its voice gentle. "We are the keepers. We are what remains of the—" Found her voice. "I have never heard of you." "You would not have. We existed long before your kind took its first steps. We protected this galaxy for millions of years. When the Great Darkness came, we gave everything to stop it. These ships, this fleet, are our legacy." The keeper raised its hand and images filled the air around. She saw a beautiful civilization spanning thousands of worlds. She saw them building, creating, laughing. Then she saw something else, something terrible. A wave of pure darkness swept across the stars, eating everything in its path. Worlds vanished. Suns went dark. Billions of lives ended in moments. "We called it the devouring tide," the keeper continued. "We could not destroy it. We could only contain it, seal it away. But the seal is breaking. The darkness will return." Legs felt weak. "Why are you telling me this?" The keeper looked at her with something like hope. "Because we have searched for 3 million years, scanning every species in this galaxy. We needed someone to inherit our fleet, to lead the fight when the time came. We found many who were strong, many who were smart, many who lived longer and knew more than your kind." It stepped closer to her, and she felt warmth spread through her body. "But we chose you. We chose humanity, because you carry something rare, something precious. You call it hope. You fight when all logic says you should surrender. You love even when loss is certain. The devouring tide feeds on despair. You are its opposite." Stood frozen. This was too much. She was a scientist, not a hero. She was nobody special. "I cannot do this," she said. "You have made a mistake." The keeper smiled sadly. "We do not make mistakes, and you will understand soon. The darkness is coming, Cole. The galaxy needs you, whether you believe it or not." The light around her grew brighter, and she felt something ancient touch her mind. Her life would never be the same. Woke up on the floor of the alien chamber. Her head was pounding and her body felt strange, like it belonged to someone else. She could feel things she had never felt before. The ship around her was alive, and somehow she could sense its heartbeat. The keepers stood in a circle around her, their glowing forms watching with patience that spanned millions of years. "What did you do to me?" asked, struggling to stand. "We began the bonding process," the lead keeper replied. "The fleet must connect with your mind. It is the only way you can command it." Shook her head. "No, I did not agree to this. I do not want this." She turned and ran back toward her shuttle. The keepers did not stop her. She climbed inside and flew out of the massive ship, back toward the starward Hope. Her crew was waiting for her, their faces full of relief and questions. "Commander, what happened?" Greg asked as soon as she stepped onto the bridge. "You were gone for 6 hours. We thought we lost you." 6 hours? It had felt like minutes. Opened her mouth to explain, but she did not know where to start. How could she tell them that an ancient alien race had chosen her to save the galaxy? It sounded insane even to her. Before she could speak, the flickered. The alien fleet had come to life. All 17 ships were glowing now, moving slowly into a new formation around the starward Hope. They were not attacking. They were waiting. "They are following us," Danny said, his voice shaking. "Commander, the whole fleet is following us." Felt the connection in her mind grow stronger. The ships were bonded to her now. Where she went, they would follow. She had no choice anymore. She ordered the crew to set a course for Earth. They needed help. They needed to tell someone. The journey would take weeks, and during that time, barely slept. Every night, the keepers appeared in her dreams, showing her more visions of the devouring tide. She saw worlds wrapped in darkness. She heard the screams of billions as the tide consumed them. She watched civilizations older than Earth crumble into nothing. The devouring tide was not just a force of nature. It was alive. It was hungry, and it hated everything that lived in the light. By the time they reached Earth's solar system, understood why they had been so desperate. The tide was waking up. Its seal had held for 3 million years, but cracks were spreading. Within a decade, maybe less, it would break free completely. And when it did, nothing would survive. The arrival of the alien fleet caused chaos on Earth. News spread within hours. Governments demanded explanations. Scientists wanted to study the ships. Military leaders feared an invasion. For 3 days, refused to leave her ship while politicians argued about what to do. Then she received a message from home. Her husband, Ben, appeared on her screen. He was a kind man with tired eyes and gray hair that had not been there when she left. They had been married for 15 years, though her work kept them apart more often than together. He had always supported her dreams, even when it meant being alone. He said, his voice breaking, "Please tell me you are okay." She wanted to lie. She wanted to say everything was fine, but she had never been able to lie to him. "I do not know what I am anymore," she admitted. "Something happened out there, Ben, something impossible. They say I am supposed to save everyone, but I do not know how. I am just a scientist. I am nobody special." Ben smiled, that same warm smile she had fallen in love with 20 years ago. "You have always been special to me. And if those aliens picked you out of everyone in the galaxy, maybe they know something we do not. What if they are wrong? Then you will do your best anyway. That is who you are. You do not give up, you never have." Wiped tears from her eyes. She had needed to hear that more than she realized. The next day she agreed to meet with the United Earth Council. She stood before the most powerful leaders on the planet and told them everything. Some laughed at her. Some called her a liar or a fool. But when she showed them the footage from the alien ships, when she let them hear the keepers speak, the laughter stopped. "This devouring tide," said President, a stern woman with sharp eyes. "How long do we have?" "Maybe 5 years," replied. "Maybe less. It is already moving toward the inner galaxy. If we do nothing, it will reach us eventually." The room exploded with arguments. Some wanted to hide, some wanted to fight, some wanted to pretend the whole thing was not real, but stood firm. "We cannot run," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "There is nowhere to hide from something that eats stars. Our only chance is to stand together. Humanity and everyone else in this galaxy. We fight or we die. There is no third option." The council voted that night. They would support Cole and her alien fleet. Earth would prepare for war. Over the next few months, trained with the keepers every day. The bonding process continued, and it was painful beyond anything she had experienced. The alien technology reshaped parts of her brain, giving her the ability to command ships that were older than the dinosaurs. She learned to move the fleet with her thoughts, to fire weapons that could crack planets, to raise shields that could block the fire of a sun. But the power came with memories. She saw them as they had been, a beautiful people who had loved music and art and each other. She felt their fear as the devouring tide came. She experienced their sacrifice as they gave their lives to create the seal. Millions of them had died to buy the galaxy 3 million years. Now that time was running out. One night stood alone on the bridge of the flagship, staring at Earth through the window. Her planet looked so small, so fragile. 8 billion people lived down there, most of them with no idea what was coming. The keeper appeared beside her. "You still doubt yourself," it said. "How can I not?" whispered. "You should have chosen someone stronger, someone braver, someone who knows what they are doing." Was silent for a long moment. Then it spoke words that would carry with her forever. "We scanned every species in this galaxy. We found warriors who could crush mountains. We found minds that could calculate the movements of stars. We found beings who lived for 10,000 years. None of them were right, because strength fades. Intelligence becomes arrogance. Long lives breed caution. The keeper turned to face her. But humans, you fight even when you cannot win. You hope even when hope is foolish. You love even when love brings pain. The devouring tide has consumed countless civilizations, but it has never faced anything like humanity. Looked back at Earth. Maybe she was not the hero the galaxy deserved, but she was the one it had gotten. And she would not let them down. Word spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. The ancient fleet had awakened, and it had chosen a human to command it. Some species were curious, some were afraid, and some were very angry. The Confederacy had ruled the Galactic Council for over 10,000 years. They were a group of 7 elder species who believed that wisdom came with age, and that younger races like humanity should know their place. When they learned that the most powerful weapons in the galaxy now belonged to a human, they demanded a meeting. Had no choice but to go. If she wanted to defeat the devouring tide, she needed allies. She could not save the galaxy alone, no matter how powerful her fleet was. She traveled to Prime, a massive space station at the center of the galaxy where the Confederacy held its council sessions. Her brother-in-law, Captain Cole, came with her, along with a small team of human diplomats. Was Ben's younger brother, a military man who had never liked much. He thought she was reckless, but when she asked for his help, he came without question. "This place makes me nervous," muttered as their shuttle approached the station. Prime was the size of a moon, covered in towers and domes that belonged to dozens of different species. Ships of every shape and size flew around it like insects around a hive. "It makes everyone nervous," replied. "That is the point." The council chamber was a vast circular room with seats rising up in tiers all around them. Representatives from hundreds of species filled those seats, watching as walked to the center platform. She felt very small and very human. The 7 elder species of the Confederacy sat on the highest tier, looking down at her like judges at a trial. There was Ambassador of a being made of living crystal whose body sparkled with cold light. There was High Commander of and warrior with 4 arms and mandibles that could cut through steel. There was Elder Soma of a delicate creature with pale skin and eyes that seemed to look right through you. And there were 4 others, each one ancient and powerful in their own way. Spoke first, its voice ringing like glass. "You are the human called Cole. You claim that the fleet has chosen you to save our galaxy." "I do not claim anything," replied, keeping her voice steady. "The fleet chose me. I did not ask for it, I did not want it, but here we are." Murmurs spread through the chamber. A human speaking so boldly to the Confederacy was almost unheard of. "Your species has only traveled between stars for 200 years, continued. "My people built our first starships when your ancestors were still living in caves. They were fighting wars across the galaxy when your kind was learning to make fire. What makes you think you are worthy of the legacy?" Had expected this question. She had practiced her answer 100 times, but now, standing here, all her prepared words felt wrong, so she spoke from her heart instead. "I do not think I am worthy," she said. "Humans are young, we are foolish. We make mistakes that older species stopped making millions of years ago. We fight wars over borders that do not really exist. We destroy our own world even as we try to save it. I know all of this. I am not here to tell you that humanity is perfect." She paused, looking up at the assembled aliens. "But I am here to tell you that we do not give up. When our ancestors faced dangers that should have killed them, they survived. When we faced diseases that should have ended us, we found cures. When we looked at the stars and saw how far away they were, we built ships to reach them anyway. We are not the strongest species. We are not the oldest, but we are stubborn. We keep going when others would stop." The chamber was silent, could feel hundreds of eyes on her, judging her, measuring her. The commander leaned forward. His species was known for their love of battle, and his voice was harsh and deep. "Pretty words, but words do not win wars. The devouring tide destroyed civilizations that had weapons beyond your imagination. What can humans offer that they could not? Met his eyes without flinching. Hope. Made a sound that might have been a laugh. Hope is not a weapon. You are wrong, said. Hope is the only weapon that matters. The devouring tide feeds on despair. It grows stronger when its enemies lose faith. That is why it won so many times before. It crushed spirits before it crushed ships. But humans do not lose hope easily. We are too stupid to know when to quit. Elder Soma of the rose from her seat. Her species could sense emotions, and she had been watching carefully this whole time. She speaks the truth, Soma said, her soft voice carrying through the chamber. I feel no deception in her, only fear and courage and something else. She tilted her head, studying like a puzzle. Something bright, something warm. I have not felt such a thing from another species in a very long time. The other ambassadors looked uncertain. They had expected to dismiss this human easily, but she was not behaving the way they thought she would. Tried again. Even if we believe you, why should we follow a human? The fleet should be given to the Confederacy. We have the experience to use it properly. Shook her head. The fleet will not follow you. It is bonded to me. That is not my choice. That is how they built it. If you kill me or lock me away, the fleet will go dormant again, and there will be no one to fight the tide. This caused an uproar. Several ambassadors shouted in anger. Others demanded proof. Stepped closer too, his hand moving toward his weapon, but she waved him back. I am not your enemy, she said loudly, cutting through the noise. The devouring tide is your enemy. It does not care if you are old or young, powerful or weak. It will consume everything. The only way any of us survive is if we work together. I am not asking you to follow me because I am human. I am asking you to fight beside me because the alternative is death. The debate continued for hours. Many species wanted nothing to do with humanity. They thought it was better to hide, or to try building their own weapons, or to simply accept that the end was coming. But slowly, voices began to speak in favor. They were the first to officially join, stood and pounded his four fists together. My people respect courage, he declared. This human has more courage than half the species in this room. The will fight. The joined next, followed by a dozen smaller species who had been watching from the lower tiers. By the end of the day, had the beginnings of a coalition. It was not perfect. The and several other major powers refused to commit, but it was a start. As walked back to her shuttle, fell into step beside her. That was impressive, he admitted. I did not think you could do it. Laughed tiredly. I did not think I could either, but we do not have time for doubt anymore. The tide is coming. Ready or not, we have to fight. She looked back at Prime, at the thousands of ships and millions of beings who called it home. Soon, all of them would face the darkness. She just hoped they were ready. The devouring tide struck without warning. It hit IV, a peaceful world on the edge of space, home to 4,020,000 human colonists. The planet had no military value. It had no strategic importance. The tide chose it for one simple reason. It was full of life, and life was what the darkness craved. Received the distress call in the middle of the night. She was on the flagship of the ancient fleet, a vessel she had named the Last Light. The keepers woke her with their voices in her mind, and she knew immediately that something terrible was happening. Show me, she commanded. The air in front of her filled with images. IV hung in space, a beautiful green and blue world with white clouds and silver oceans. But something was wrong. A wall of darkness was spreading across one side of the planet, swallowing everything it touched. Cities vanished into the black. Mountains disappeared. Rivers and forests and millions of living beings were consumed in seconds. Felt sick. She had seen this in her visions, but seeing it for real was different. This was not a memory. This was happening right now. All ships, she ordered, her voice hard. Maximum speed to IV. The fleet jumped through space in ways that human science could not explain. 17 ancient warships tore across the galaxy, covering distances that would have taken human vessels months in just minutes. But even so, they were almost too late. When they arrived, the devouring tide had consumed nearly a third of the planet. Evacuation ships were fleeing in every direction, carrying survivors who screamed and cried and begged for help. Military vessels tried to fight, but their weapons passed through the darkness without effect. The tide simply swallowed them whole. Took command. She had never led a real battle before. All her training, all her preparation had not prepared her for this, but there was no one else. The fleet responded to her and her alone. Target the leading edge of the tide, she ordered. Fire everything. The ancient weapons of the blazed to life. Beams of pure light cut across space and struck the darkness. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the tide screamed, not out loud but inside the minds of everyone nearby. It was a sound of pure hatred, pure hunger, and it made one to curl up and cry. But she did not cry, she pushed harder. The weapons hurt the tide. They could not destroy it, but they could slow it down, drive it back. The darkness retreated from the beams of light, pulling away from parts of the planet it had not yet consumed. Lieutenant Murphy called to her tactical officer, a young woman named Kate who had volunteered to join her crew. Coordinate the evacuation. Get everyone off that planet. Kate worked frantically, directing hundreds of transport ships to landing zones, calculating escape routes, keeping track of survivors. She was brilliant under pressure and thanked whatever luck had brought her aboard. But the tide was not giving up. It adapted. It changed shape, spreading thinner to avoid the worst of the weapon's fire. It sent tendrils shooting out in different directions, grabbing ships and pulling them into its mass. Watched a cruiser with 3,000 people aboard vanish into the black in the time it took to draw a breath. She pushed the fleet harder. The ancient ships responded, but she could feel their power draining. They had never designed them for extended combat. They were meant to deliver one overwhelming blow, not fight a long battle. If this continued, she would run out of energy before the evacuation was complete. "Commander," Kate said, her voice tight with fear, "we have 400 transport ships still on the surface. They need 30 more minutes." 30 minutes, an eternity in a battle like this. Made a choice. She flew the last light directly toward the devouring tide, putting her flagship between the darkness and the planet. The other ships followed, forming a wall of ancient technology against the endless hunger. The tide hit them like a wave of nightmares, felt it pressing against her mind, trying to find a way in. It whispered to her, showing her visions of failure. She saw Earth consumed. She saw Ben dying in the darkness. She saw herself, alone, watching the last star in the galaxy go out. She pushed back. She thought of hope. She thought of stubborn, stupid humanity and their refusal to give up. She thought of every person who had ever faced impossible odds and kept fighting anyway. The darkness could not find a grip. It slid off her mind like water off stone. But the battle was not going well. One of the ancient ships took a direct hit from a tendril of pure darkness. Its shields failed and felt the ship die through their bond. It was like losing a piece of herself. The crew of 40 humans who had volunteered to serve aboard it were gone in an instant. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." There was no time to grieve. More tendrils were coming. Redirected power from damaged ships tried to fill the gap in their formation. But the tide was learning. It was intelligent in a way she had not expected. Every time she found a tactic that worked, it adapted. The battle lasted 2 hours. 2 hours of constant fighting, constant death, constant impossible choices. At one point, had to choose between saving a transport ship with 200 children aboard or protecting a refugee camp with 3,000 adults. She chose the children. The camp was consumed. Those 3,000 faces would haunt her dreams for the rest of her life. In the end, they saved 2 million people. 2 million out of 4,020,000 humans. The rest were gone, eaten by a darkness that felt no mercy and knew no satisfaction. Ordered the fleet to retreat when the tide suddenly pulled back. It did not chase them. It had gotten what it wanted. IV was dead, a lifeless ball of rock floating in space. The devouring tide absorbed its remains and grew stronger. Back on the last light, sat alone in her quarters. She had not eaten. She had not slept. She stared at a wall and saw nothing but the faces of everyone she had failed. Kate knocked on her door. When did not answer, she came in anyway. "Commander," Kate said softly, "you saved 2 million people today. I lost 2 million more. You did everything you could." Laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Did I? I had the most powerful fleet in the galaxy, and I still could not stop it. I still watched millions die. What good is all this power if I cannot save everyone?" Kate sat down beside her. She was quiet for a long moment. "My grandmother used to say that you cannot save everyone," Kate said finally. "But that does not mean you stop trying. You save who you can. You fight as hard as you can. And when it is over, you carry the ones you lost with you. You remember them. You let their memory make you stronger." Wiped tears from her eyes. She had not even realized she was crying. The keeper appeared in the corner of the room, glowing softly. "She is right," said. "The learned this lesson too long ago. We could not save everyone, but we saved enough. We gave the galaxy 3 million more years. That is not failure, that is victory." "It does not feel like victory," said. "It never does. That is the burden of command. You carry the weight of every life lost and saved. Someone stronger might have retreated today, protected the fleet, calculated acceptable losses. Someone smarter might have decided that 2 million saved was enough and pulled back sooner. But you stayed until the last transport escaped. That is why we chose you." Looked up at the ancient being. "Because I am too stupid to know when to quit." Smiled, a strange expression on a face made of light. "Because you care too much to ever stop trying. The devouring tide has never faced that before. Today you heard it. Today you showed it that this galaxy will not be easy prey." Stood slowly, her body ached, her heart ached more. But she was still standing. The war had only begun, and she would not give up. Not ever. The final battle came sooner than anyone expected. 6 months after IV, the devouring tide had consumed 12 more worlds. Each time, and her fleet arrived too late or fought too long against something that seemed to have no end. The coalition was cracking. Fear spread through the galaxy like a disease. Some species talked about surrendering. Others tried to flee to distant corners of the universe, hoping the darkness would not follow. But never stopped. She fought every battle. She saved every life she could. And slowly, impossibly, she began to understand the enemy. The devouring tide was not just random hunger. It had a purpose. It was heading somewhere specific, eating worlds along the way to grow stronger. When finally realized where it was going, her blood ran cold. The cradle. It was the oldest star cluster in the galaxy, a place where the first stars had been born billions of years ago. They had used its ancient energy to create the seal that trapped the tide. If the darkness reached it, if it consumed that power, nothing would ever stop it again. Gathered the coalition on Prime. The great chamber that had once been full of doubt was now half empty. So many species had given up or been destroyed. But those who remained were the ones who still believed, who still hoped. Even the had come. Ambassador stood among the crowd, its crystal body dim with grief. The tide had destroyed 2 of their. Pride meant nothing now. "The devouring tide will reach the cradle in 72 hours, announced. "If we do nothing, the galaxy ends. If we fight, we might still lose, but at least we will have tried." No one argued. No one asked questions. They knew what had to be done. Every ship that could fly joined the fleet. The ancient vessels led the way, followed by thousands of ships from dozens of species. Human warships flew beside cruisers. Battle wagons formed lines with healing ships. For the first time in history, the galaxy was truly united. They arrived at the cradle just as the devouring tide reached its outer edge. Had never seen anything so terrible or so beautiful in her life. The ancient star cluster glowed with golden light, hundreds of newborn stars burning against the darkness. And the darkness itself stretched across the sky like a living shadow, bigger than she had ever seen it, pulsing with stolen life from a dozen dead worlds. "All ships," said, her voice calm despite the terror in her heart. "This is where we make our stand. No retreat, no surrender. Fight until you cannot fight anymore. And if we fall today, fall knowing that you stood against the darkness when it mattered most." The battle began. Weapons fire lit up space like fireworks. The Coalition fleet threw everything they had at the devouring tide. Missiles, lasers, plasma bolts, strange weapons from species had never met. The ancient ships blazed with power, carving paths of light through the endless black. The tide fought back. Tendrils of darkness lashed out, swallowing ships whole. It sent waves of despair crashing against the minds of every living being in the fleet. Felt pilots losing hope, felt crews falling into madness. She pushed back with everything she had, sending her own hope outward like a beacon. They charged forward, their battle wagons ramming directly into the tide's tendrils. They knew they would die, but they bought precious minutes for others. The linked minds, creating psychic barriers that shielded entire sections of the fleet from the tide's mental attacks. They burned themselves out, sacrificing their sanity so others could keep fighting. Human ships, small and primitive compared to the ancient fleet, formed defensive lines around evacuation routes and medical vessels. They had no special weapons, no ancient technology, but they refused to run. When cruisers fell, human frigates took their place. When carriers were destroyed, human shuttles rescued their crews. Pushed deeper into the storm, the keepers guided her, showing her paths through the chaos. She was looking for something, a place they had told her about in her dreams. The heart of the cradle, where the seal had first been created. She found it at the center of the star cluster, a point of perfect stillness surrounded by ancient light. This was where they had made their last stand. This was where the seal could be restored. But there was a problem. The seal could not be fixed from outside. Someone had to carry it into the heart of the devouring tide and ignite it from within. The explosion would destroy the tide forever, but it would also destroy whoever carried the seal. Prepared herself to die. She had always known it might come to this. From the moment the keepers first spoke to her, she had felt the weight of sacrifice hanging over her. She was not special, she was not a hero, but she could be useful one last time. She sent a final message to Ben. She told him she loved him. She told him she was sorry they would not grow old together. She told him to be happy, to live, to remember her not as a legend but as the woman who had loved him. Then she turned the last light toward the darkness and prepared to fly into death. But the keepers stopped her. Appeared on the bridge, brighter than had ever seen it. The other keepers were there too, all of them, hundreds of ancient souls who had waited millions of years for this moment. "What are you doing?" demanded. "I have to go, the seal needs a carrier." "Yes," agreed, "it does, but not you." Did not understand. Then she saw what the keepers were doing. They were flowing into the fleet systems, filling every ship with their light. The ancient vessels began to glow brighter and brighter, becoming stars themselves. "We are the seal," said. "We always have been. Our consciousness, our memories, our hope. We poured ourselves into these ships 3 million years ago. We have been waiting for someone worthy to inherit our purpose, to carry our legacy into the future." Tears streamed down his face. "You cannot do this, I need you. The galaxy needs you." "The galaxy needs you," corrected gently. "We are tired, we have waited so long, let us rest. Let us end the nightmare we could not end before, and let humanity take our place among the stars." The keepers touched her mind one last time, pouring their memories into her soul. She felt 3 million years of history, of love and loss and hope that never died. She felt the saying goodbye. "Remember us," whispered. "Remember that even in darkness light can be found. Remember that sacrifice is not defeat. Remember that hope is the strongest force in the universe." The ancient fleet broke formation. 17 ships, each one carrying the last traces of a dead civilization, flew toward the heart of the devouring tide. The darkness tried to stop them. It threw everything it had at them. But the ships were beyond destruction now. They were made of pure light and ancient love. They reached the center of the tide. And they ignited. The explosion was not violent. It was beautiful. Light poured outward in every direction, golden and warm and full of something could only describe as peace. The devouring tide screamed across every frequency, a sound of absolute terror and pain. Then it began to collapse, breaking apart into fragments that faded like shadows at dawn. The darkness that had threatened the galaxy for billions of years was gone. Drifted in a small human shuttle, the last light having vanished with its brothers. She watched the light fade over the cradle and felt the silence in her mind where the keepers used to be. She wept for them. She wept for everyone who had died along the way. She wept for the galaxy that would never know how close it had come to annihilation. But she also felt something else, something warm and bright hiding inside her heart. Hope, 1 year later, stood before the newly formed Galactic Assembly. Humanity had been given a seat among the elder species, not because they were old or wise, but because they had shown what courage looked like. And dozens of others stood with them as equals. Ambassador approached after the ceremony. "I doubted your species, admitted. I was wrong." Smiled, "We doubt ourselves too. That is why we keep trying to be better." She returned to Earth to Ben, to a quiet life she had never thought she would have. But she knew the keepers were still with her, their memories living inside her mind. She would carry their wisdom to future generations. She would teach humanity to be worthy of the legacy they had inherited. The galaxy was safe. The darkness was gone. And somewhere among the stars, in the light of 1,000 newborn suns, the finally rested in peace. Because a human had given them hope. And hope, in the end, was all that mattered.